Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this lab, we're going to be extending our knowledge of continuous integration and continuous delivery on AWS by integrating a code pipeline with a build and test process using Mocha. And we're going to use CodeBuild, which will run the Node package manager to build that application, and then it will run a test using Mocha, and if it passes that test, then it will then forward those artifacts over to the AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment to be deployed. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to have our pipeline, and as we've done in the past, we're going to have a source repository with our code in GitHub, and we're going to have our environment as an Elastic Beanstalk environment. But we're going to introduce a build and test process there, or build and staging process there. So we're going to be using CodeBuild and NPM to build that. And then once it's built that application, then it will pass it on to Mocha, and that will actually test that for us. And if that Mocha test passes, then the Elastic Beanstalk will have that deployed to it. Now, our deployment package that we're going to be providing to Code Pipeline will have some additional things in it that we'll need to run that build process and that build and test process. So in our buildspec.yaml file, we're going to define that additional steps in there, and it's going to refer to the Mocha. So we're going to actually have that in our package.json. We're going to make sure that we actually set up and build Mocha. And once that's done, it's going to run a test, which will be located in a test.js file there. So that'll be passed over to Code Pipeline, and CodeBuild, or Code Pipeline, will then pass it over to CodeBuild, which will then run NPM, which will install all of the packages that are defined in that package.json file. And then once that has been built, it will then pass it over and run Mocha, and Mocha will run that test.js. If that is successful, then it will pass it over to, or AWS Code Pipeline will pass it over to AWS Elastic Beanstalk, and that will build that, or would deploy that to that Elastic Beanstalk environment. Now, before we start building or creating our Elastic Beanstalk environment, what we need to do is go into the Backspace Academy GitHub and fork the repository for this lab. So there is a link there in the lab notes to that. So we just go in here. First off, we can star it, and then we fork it. Okay, so now that we've got that forked, what we can do is that we can actually download that zip file. Now, once that zip file has completed, we need to actually change it so that all of the code is not hidden in a folder. So first off, we'll extract that. Okay, so that's extracted, and we just need to zip that back up again. Okay, so there we've got that zipped for us, and we can save that somewhere for easy access. So let's now jump into Elastic Beanstalk and create that environment. Okay, so create new application. We'll give that a name. And create. And now we go to Actions, create an environment for this application. It's a web server environment. We'll leave the name as it is, and we need to select Node.js, and we'll upload our code. And we can create our environment now. Okay, so after 10 minutes or so, we've got our Elastic Beanstalk environment up and running. So before we jump into Code Pipeline, what we'll do is we'll have a look at some of the changes that we've made to integrate with the build and test environments here. So let's have a look first at our buildspec.yaml. So we'll just have a look at that and see what's going on there. So we've got some pre-build commands here, or we've got first some install commands. So we're going to be installing Mocha. Then once we've done that, we're going to do npm install. So it'll install all of the packages that are located in our package.json file. And then we're going to be installing unit.js to run our unit tests. Once that's all done and we've got everything built, we can then run mocha test.js, which will run a test on or using Mocha, and that will be located in test.js file. And once that is successful, then it will pass it over to, or will create all these artifacts and pass these artifacts over to Elastic Beanstalk. So let's have a look at the test.js. So that's our test. So this is not a lab on how to use Mocha or anything like that, but it's a very simple test. It's just creating a test.string here. Starts with hello, and then we're passing the word hello back to that, so it's obviously going to pass. And so if that test passes, which it most definitely will, then that will proceed to deliver that through to Elastic Beanstalk. So let's jump into Code Pipeline and create this code pipeline. So we jump into Code Pipeline and create our pipeline. Again, we get there from services, Code Pipeline, create pipeline. We'll give this a name. And we can use an existing service role that we've used before if we've got one. And we'll just use our default location for the artifact store. That will be fine. And we'll click on next. Our source provider again is going to be GitHub. We'll connect to our GitHub repository. Okay, so we've done that. We now need to get our repository name. So we go back into our GitHub account, and then we can select the name of that repository. So we just copy that and paste that in. And our branch will be master again. Again, we'll use the GitHub webhooks and click on next. Now, we're going to have our build provider here. So that is going to be AWS CodeBuild. So we don't have a project name, so it's going to create a project for us. So we click on Create Project. So that has now opened up another window, which is going to have CodeBuild there. So we'll give our CodeBuild project a name. We won't worry about a description for it. We're going to be using a managed image. And our operating system is going to be Ubuntu. It's a Linux. And our runtime is going to be Node.js. And we'll use the latest version of that. We'll use version 10 of Node. That will be fine. So we'll select new service role. That will be fine. And we leave use build spec file as it is. And we'll continue to code pipeline. Okay, so we've successfully created backspace EB CodeBuild in CodeBuild. So that's fine. And we'll click on next. And we're going to deploy now. So we need to again select Elastic Beanstalk. Select our application and our environment. And we click on next. So there we go. So we've got our pipeline there. It's going to have our source being GitHub. And we're going to build stage there, which is going to be an AWS CodeBuild project called backspace-eb-CodeBuild. And we're going to be deploying to Elastic Beanstalk. So let's create that pipeline. Okay, so the pipeline has been created, and so now it will start to build and test that source, and hopefully it will deploy it to Elastic Beanstalk if there are no errors. Okay, so after about 10 minutes or so, it has gone through and it has built that successfully, and that it has run that test, and that it has also passed that on as a deployment. So that is great. So we've successfully created a full CICD pipeline going from a GitHub repository all the way through to an Elastic Beanstalk environment. Now, one last thing to do is to clean up so that we don't get a bill at the end of the month. So the first thing we can do is that we can edit this and delete it. And delete. So that will be deleting, successfully deleted, that's fine. And we go into our Elastic Beanstalk and we go into actions, and we can turn, actually what we can do is we can go into our actual application and we can delete our application, which will delete those environments as well. So go into our application, delete application. Okay, and if we go into this now, it will see that he's terminating our environment for us. So that is all complete, so we won't get a bill at the end of the month. And I hope you've enjoyed this lab. It's been quite a good one, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.